Good afternoon and welcome to this hybrid meeting of Angus Council. And I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. I go to apologies for absence, and Mrs Forsyth will intimate.
No apologies, Provost.
Next, item 2. Colleagues, do we have any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? Councillors Gall, Stewart and Speed. In that order, please.
Thank you, Provost. I'm not sure if it's necessary, but just to declare interest of transparency, I'm a member and director of Promo in Montrose, which is an organisation based in Regenerating in the High Street. It's just in relation to agenda item 5, motion 3 by Councillor Scott, but I'll stay in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Gall, and then Councillor Stewart.
Likewise, it's I don't know if I need to do a statement of transparency, but in relation to the same agenda item, I organise events in Montrose High Street where there's road closures and things like that, just in case. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart and Councillor Speed.
Thank you. Yeah, it's in relation to agenda item 12. It's a statement of transparency. I am a member of the Arbroath Courthouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. And we then go on to item 3, and these are minutes of a previous meeting and a special meeting, so we can take them together. Can I have your approval, colleagues? Thank you. Okay, now on to item 4, the possible exclusion of the public and the press. Do we agree to exclude the public and the press thereafter? Hold on, folks, we have a member whose hand is up. Councillor Gegg.
Thank you, Provost. I've sought clarification with Councillor Wan with regards to why this particular item is on a green paper, and we received a response from legal. With that, I'm believing that this item should be open for the public to see and scrutinise. I would ask that we defer this to the next meeting of the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Gegg. I just need to take a little bit of advice here.
Thank you, Provost. I think at this point I would ask Audrey Mickey, the author of the report, to comment. I think there are implications for the group if this matter was to be deferred. Just in terms of the justification for it being an exempt report, that was on the basis of paragraph 4, and that's in relation to funding being sought by an external group. So within the legislation, that would give justification for the report to be exempt. And as the decision has not yet been made public by Scottish Government, that's the justification for it being exempt. But I'll pass over to Ms Mickey just to confirm the position regards holding the report up.
Ms Mickey.
Thank you. You've not got much more to add. I think Ms Watson's covered it. The reason for the paper being exempt is really us trying to be proactive and make sure that we're actually ahead with the funding once the award comes. So this is the only reason for being private is that Scottish Government haven't actually released their notification of the awards, and it's just, I guess, out of respect.
Thank you, Ms Mickey. Councillor Gegg.
If I can ask, does that mean that there's a time-critical nature to this particular agenda item? And if so, if it's not, if we can't defer it to the next meeting of the Council, could we perhaps defer it to a special meeting of the Council so that the public are fully transparently aware of what's the contents within the group? I see that there's some members that obviously disagree with transparency with the public. That's obviously their decision, but I think the public should be aware.
I want to ask Mrs Watson to come in now.
Thank you, Provost. So certainly in terms of transparency, it would be the intention that once the decision is made by Scottish Government, we would be then publicising that in a press release. So it's not that this is something that we would be wishing to keep exempt for, forever. It's something that we just feel we can't publicise at the moment. But as soon as that is then public, we would be making this available to the public, this information.
Councillor Greig.
Okay, I'm happy to accept that, but I would also seek clarification that obviously because this item is on a green paper, once the item has been released, does that mean that we are then as select members are free to discuss what was the contents of that paper once the information that you've given is released, or would that still mean that we are then liable to breaching confidentiality of the Standards Commission?
Would that be something that we can discuss right now, Mrs Watson, or do we need you to come back with that?
Well, I say, Provost, that any exempt report will continue to be an exempt report, but if we release information within the public domain, you would be able to discuss that public information, but not anything that maybe hasn't been released from the exempt report. I'm not saying that there would be anything that we wouldn't be releasing, but it would still be an exempt report that you couldn't disclose. But then with the press release and information we make available is obviously then something you would be able to discuss.
Sorry to come back again, but going by one of the recommendations within the report will have ramifications, and again that's something I personally believe should be in the public domain.
Mrs Watson, is there anything you can add, or would you like to take some time over this?
Thank you, Provost. Just looking at the recommendations in the report, the first three are for noting. We've then got the fourth is delegating authority to Director of Finance to accept the formal grant offer. 5 is agreeing Angus Council to be the accountable body. And then we've got authority being delegated again. Therefore, I think that, in terms of the decision being made today, I think that could still take place. Sorry, what was there?
Yeah, that's okay. Can I just bring in Mrs Mickey? Sorry, can I just bring in Mrs Mickey for a moment, please, Mrs Watson?
Can we make a suggestion? So because the recommendations are actually for awarding delegated authority, once the Director of Finance has approved the award, if that's what comes out of today, we can bring a paper back for information which can be put out into the public domain, if that satisfies.
Yeah, I'm happy to agree with that, and also because obviously Ms Watson has publicly declared what are in the recommendations, that is now in the public information, so we can then discuss that now as well, publicly.
I think it's the content of the report that's exempt, Councillor, and that has not been disclosed, so certainly that cannot, the content of the report still can't be disclosed.
Colleagues, are people happy with this right now so I can move on? Can you agree?
Content, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, where was I? Item 5.
Item 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Item 5, we start with motions in terms of Standing Order 24.1. It's Councillor Melville's motion, and I would ask him to come in now.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Proctor will be seconding my motion.
Thank you. I thought you'd tell me that.
Thank you, Provost. We've not long passed the 3-year mark of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. Now, 3 years is a long time, but it's important that we don't forget the people of Ukraine, that we don't become inured to their suffering, and that we do what we can to support them. The invasion by Russia has inflicted untold misery on millions of people and has resulted in the deaths of innocent men, women, and children. And we've seen that in the heinous war crimes unearthed in villages like Bucha. But it's also led to many thousands of people fleeing to safer countries. Angus has provided a safe temporary home for around 300 Ukrainian refugees. The work of our resettlement team, as well as the individual efforts of so many people across Angus, has been exceptional, but there's more that we can do. We should build formal ties with the Ukrainian authorities for the promotion of cultural and economic cooperation. We should step up our work with both UK and Scottish governments to support Ukrainian refugees here in Angus. And we should fly the flag of Ukraine as a visible statement of our solidarity. If this motion is passed, the Council will be able to enter formal discussions on the exact terms of a friendship agreement with the Sumy Oblast, identified by the Ukrainian Embassy as a potential partner for Angus. But, Provost, I'm also asking the Council to unite behind two key messages. First, we must see a just and lasting peace in Ukraine to ensure the future security of Europe. And second, Ukraine must remain a free, independent nation with her people in the driving seat of their own destiny. And on that note, I want to pay tribute to the efforts of both of Angus's MPs, Dave Duggan and Stephen Gethins, who've worked tirelessly to ensure that support for Ukraine remains a key focus of the UK Parliament. Passing this motion today, colleagues, is an opportunity to underline our solidarity with Ukraine, to condemn the aggressive actions of a gangster state bent on the domination of a peaceful neighbour, and to reaffirm our support for those Ukrainian friends we are hosting until they can go back home. So please support the motion today.
Colleagues, would you like to ask a question? I'll ask for questions first and then I'll ask for comments. Does anybody have a question? He did say he had a seconder. Councillor Melville actually said, I beg your pardon, I should have mentioned you, Councillor Proctor. Councillor Melville did intimate that you are his seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Provost.
Do you want to speak just now?
I agree to second the motion. Do you want me to speak now? I would just say, colleagues, I strongly support Councillor Melville's motion of the support of Ukraine. And I'd just like to remind members how much we in the County of Angus have contributed to helping the people of Ukraine fight against the naked Russian aggression on a peaceful country and a democratically elected government. You may be aware that members of the British security forces, including the Black Watch, was our own home regiment, and many of these members come from Angus. They have been involved in the training of and continue to be involved in the training of Ukrainian servicemen and women. And also many servicemen and women from across Angus, including those stationed at Royal Marines Condor and in the rest of the UK, have been deployed to northeastern Europe and into Central Europe in support of Ukraine, and to illustrate to the Russian invaders that Great Britain and Europe are wholly in support of Ukraine. And as Councillor Melville quite rightly said, we should also think of the numerous Ukrainian guests who are currently living in Angus, who have been supported by many local people and organisations and have worked hard to make our guests feel welcome and safe in our country. Now, I do know, however, that after being privileged to have met quite a lot of these guests, that they naturally wish to return to their homeland and live in peace without fearing for their lives and those of their families and friends, and not to have fear for the ruination of their once prosperous country in the future by any future violent aggression from their bullying neighbour Russia. Now, I fully support this motion and agree that both the UK and Scottish Parliaments continue to express the wishes of the people of the countries of our United Kingdom, and that the cessation of hostilities and freedom of the people of Ukraine is paramount. I do feel that the flags of Ukraine, Great Britain, and Scotland flying side by side against naked aggression are a beacon of lifelong friendship to the people of Ukraine and to the rest of the world. So, colleagues, I ask you all to support Councillor Lloyd Melville's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. and I'll go back to questions if there are any. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you very much, Provost. I agree with the solidarity of this motion, but is the Ukrainian flag to be flown for eternity, or is it going up for special occasions? We are aligned with many other countries. Are we going to have to put up more flagpoles? Thank you.
I can't answer that, so I'm going to ask somebody who can.
Provost, if I may.
Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I think to answer the question raised by Councillor Nicholl, I think that it's reasonable to say that the flag of Ukraine be flown, certainly during the time of the occupation and the continuing war that's taking place. I think once that finishes, once that ends, then we look at the matter again. But I think it's to remind people of what's going on in that country and what's happening to these people, and that's why we're showing the flag.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Duff.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Provost. I mean, I think I was looking at in the terms of Councillor Melville's motion. I think in certainly a previous version, he suggested that the flag be flown at Angus House, where there are, of course, two flagpoles. Only one of them was used. And I would agree with what Councillor Proctor has said. I think not indefinitely, but for the extent of the current emergency, that would seem like an appropriate response. And if Council has agreed, then I would suggest that as maybe the answer.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Can I ask Councillor Brace to come in?
Yes, I think the answer to the question provided by Councillor Proctor and reiterated by Councillor Duff is absolutely spot on here. As for the motion, well, Angus Council, right throughout, from top to bottom and back down again, has policy and layers of policy, for very good reason, directed against bullying. This is core to what we do at Angus Council. You've got to stand up to bullies. And so I'm fully supportive of offering friendship to the people of Ukraine in their attempts and efforts to stand up to the biggest bully we've seen since the Second World War.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. And I think our Chief Executive would like to come in. Catherine.
Thank you. Just to ensure that officers are very clear if this is to be approved, I think it would be helpful if we could agree how we would come to review the flag flying, and whether that's a Chamber's decision or whether that's an officer's decision. I'm conscious that could be a very political conversation at some point in the future, and want to protect against staff being put in a difficult position. Thank you.
Mrs Lindsay, I've got another couple of hands. I'm going to bring in Councillor Gregg, and then I'm going to bring in Councillor Melville.
Thank you, Provost. I completely not 100% support the motion that's been brought by Councillor Melville and also seconded by Councillor Proctor. And I think the Chief Executive got slightly in just before part of my question now, because I was going to ask that our flag policy is updated to reflect this change. And as the Chief Executive has intimated, and I think my understanding is that at present we don't have, as a council, a dedicated flag policy, and that we simply adapt that from the Scottish Government. So perhaps a working group may be useful, or perhaps we delegate the authority to officers who are impartial to the political side of it to implement a flag policy and include this within that change.
Thank you, Councillor Gegg. I have to say that I was approached recently about a flag issue, so possibly we need some clarification. I think all my ward colleagues were as well. Councillor Melville.
Thank you again, Provost. I think to answer the Chief Executive's question, certainly we do not yet know when the emergency is likely to be over. These things do change on a daily basis, as we've seen in diplomacy over recent weeks and months. But I think it would be appropriate, given that this is a motion seeking to make this change, that there then is another motion brought forward if we seek to do that, and that will be on the judgment of elected members, whether it's in this council term, I hope it is, that this emergency is over, or any future council term.
Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Provost. Just to put my support behind Councillor Melville and Councillor Proctor's motion, I would just like to say Britain has been Ukraine's greatest ally since the war began. With diplomacy, training and high-tech weapons, which have no doubt helped keep Putin's forces at bay, that staunch support continues to this day. This week, people on the Sumy Oblast and the nearby Kursk Oblast are literally on the front line, with people dying every day from drone strikes. It is British electronic warfare equipment, thousands of counter-drones and Gravehawk defence systems and much more, which has given them hope. I do support this motion. However, it doesn't tell the whole story about Angus's support for the people of Ukraine. As perhaps Scotland's most prominent Ukraine fundraiser, Zena Dove, our support has made her so grateful that Britain is doing so much, but also that her new family are Scots. That sentiment is reflected in any of the dealings we will have with those Ukrainian nationals now calling Angus home. Thank you.
If I honestly have to say this, that's a lovely sentiment. Councillor Melville, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you, Provost. I am really cheered by the consensus across this chamber about the need for peace and about the need to ensure Ukraine's long-term future. I want to thank Councillor Proctor for his excellent seconding speech and also thank Councillor Wan for the remarks that he's just made. I don't think I need to go any further, so colleagues, please support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Can I take it that this motion is agreed? Agreed. Well done. Thank you. Okay, now we have extending employee benefit scheme to include elected members. Councillor Meakin will speak to his motion. I'll just ask him for a minute before he does. Do you have a seconder? We've got Councillor Wan. Councillor Meakin.
Thank you, Provost. The motion, as members will see, is to extend certain employee benefits to elected members. Extending certain employee benefits to elected members would, in my opinion, align with the principles of fairness and equity. It should be noted that some other local authorities already include members in their schemes. For clarity, this proposal is cost neutral. Yes, cost neutral to Angus Council, and would in fact mean, or could in fact mean, a saving to the Council in terms of employers' national insurance contributions. I would ask members to support this motion.
I think there's an amendment. Councillor Vaughan, you're going to second.
Thank you very much, Provost. Yeah, I'm not going to say very much on that. I think Councillor Meakin has said enough, but I was actually quite surprised. I was looking down there for him, and he's sitting behind us at the moment, so I couldn't find him there to thank him for bringing that. So thank you, Councillor Meakin, for raising this. And just to reiterate, this is cost neutral to the Council.
Careful, Councillor Vaughan.
Provost, notice of amendment. Do you want me to go ahead? Go ahead. Well, my amendment is simply to the direct negative to the motion, and the impact of doing so is to reject the motion. And I have a seconder.
Can you give me that name, please?
It's Councillor Beattie.
Councillor Beattie. Do you want to say anything, Councillor Beattie?
Not really, other than I want to support the amendment.
I will say a few words if I can, Provost.
Please do.
Quite simply, I don't feel the terms of this motion are considered appropriate at this time, given the proposed increase in council remuneration following the Scottish Government's acceptance of recommendations made by the Scottish Local Authorities Remuneration Committee as of 1st of April this year, and that, taken with the recent increase in council tax, any further benefits added to councillors at this time would be perceived negatively by the electorate. Thank you.
2 minutes, folks. At this stage in the game, I would invite questions. If anybody has any. Doctor, I've given you a title here today. Councillor One, do you want to question?
I actually quite like that title, Provost. Thank you very much. Doctor of what, I don't know. Could I ask the Chief Executive if Catherine has an opinion on this? Because as we've mentioned, it is cost neutral. It's not a benefit as such. It's a salary sacrifice. So you're actually spending your own money. And in the end of the day, by salary sacrifice, which I'm sure Councillor Cheap knows, being an accountant, or he's fully aware of this, that you're actually paying this back on a monthly basis off your salary, and it'll end up actually saving the council money on employers' national insurance or employers' tax or something like that. It's maybe something for Mr Lorimer to add in as well, but that's my understanding of this, and many businesses do it because it is a benefit to their staff and also for the mental health being if they want to cycle to work schemes, etc.
Thank you, Councillor One. Can I bring yourself in?
Thank you very much, Provost and Councillor Vaughan. So just to caveat that officers won't offer opinions on the motion or otherwise, but I do have Sharon Faulkner on the call who can take you through the net impact, if you like, of access to the benefits packages that we have available to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive, and thank you, Provost. Yes, the employee benefits scheme we have has various different elements to it, and some of them are cost neutral and some of them mean that the council makes some form of payment. Those that are being outlined by Councillor Meakin would be around the Tusker car scheme, the council's own car leasing scheme, additional voluntary contributions and cycle to work. So those four allow the council to reduce employers' national insurance contributions because of salary sacrifice, as has already been outlined. There are other cost neutral benefits, which include the opportunity to get a finance loan through salary finance. We have a credit union. We have the Hospital Saturday Fund, a smart tech opportunity, which allows employees to buy tech or white goods from Currys and to receive discounts. And there's a further discount scheme where you can register on a platform to receive discounts through various supermarkets, etc. And so those are those where the council can reduce employee national insurance contributions, and also those that are cost neutral, for your information.
Thank you, Mrs Faulkner, and I'm just going to bring Councillor Vaughan in.
Thank you. It was just also to find out what other local authorities do this. Is it a kind of Scottish-wide, or is it just half the other local authorities, or is there no other local authority offering this to their councillors?
Would anybody be able to furnish that answer, or is it something we come back? Sharon again. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah. Thank you, Provost. Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed picture across England. There are some other councils who are offering these benefits, and other councils don't. So it's a mixed picture. I would say it's probably not as many as half. Maybe around a third of councils are offering these types of benefits to councillors.
Thank you, Ms Faulkner. I do think that maybe Councillor Meakin did say something about that in his preamble. Would you like to speak, Councillor Meakin?
Thank you, Provost. It's just as a final comment, if that's okay. Why would we not share something? Sorry.
Councillor Meakin, can I just stop you for a minute? Yeah, because I don't think we're quite finished with questions. So just in case people do have questions, let's try and get this right. Does anybody have a question? Now we can go to comments, but I would need... Yeah. But I would need to ask you to wait to sum up. I'll need to ask if other people have comments. Any comments, colleagues?
Provost.
Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, I think hearing what Ms Faulkner has said and taking in cognizance of all the other, the other information we've got on this, I actually think this is a no-brainer. I think it's something we should do. It's going to benefit our workforce, and I do think Councillor Meehan actually put a lot of thought in this, and I think it's a good idea. I think we should support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. And now I have Councillor... Who was next? Right, I'm going to put Councillor Gregg in, and then you, Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Provost. I have to say I'd have to agree with Councillor Meehan. I think I thank him for being brave enough to bring this forward. And as has previously been said, there is no cost to the council for this. I think with some of the things in there, if I remember correctly, I think there's an employee benefit that's in there to do with support benefits. So if somebody needs counselling or whatever, then that could be available through that. So while some of us in parties, for example, the SNP, the Conservatives, Labour, that might be available to us through our parties, for all the independent councillors and further, if there are any other independent councillors come forward at the next election, they're going to benefit from that the most because they don't have a party to fall back on. They don't have any other uses of that. So I welcome it and thank you, and I will support it.
Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Provost. I think the decider for me was when Mrs Faulkner, who's the officer, had mentioned that only a third of other councils do it. I don't think we should be doing it at this time. We do have the 6-month rule, of course, and it could be brought back in 6 months' time. But with everything else that's in the agenda today, I think it's foolhardy for any of us to be voting for these benefits when I don't want to mention the percentages that we're getting, but that's the reason why. If other councils are not doing it, why should we be doing it? We'd be doing it at this point in time. Thank you.
I have Councillor Whiteside, then Doran, and then Cowdy. In that order, please.
Thank you, Provost. I just think it's important to point out the distinction between elected members and members of staff. We don't have contracts of employment as elected members, and I feel it's inappropriate to be discussing a motion to benefit ourselves at full council. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteside. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. I would wonder how else that this would be possible if it isn't brought forward as a motion to full council in order to discuss this. I mean, it is recognised that there are barriers for people who may wish to stand as elected members and be councillors. One of the things that I was elected in 2022, and I really didn't want this role to make me have a car. We have a car between me and my husband, and I didn't want it to make me have that, but actually realised within the role you do, the amount of travel that you have to do across Angus, it's really been essential. And support for people to do the role, I think, is important. It isn't a cost to the council. We're not asking for any, there's no additional cost here or any additional money being put to it, and it is a choice on individuals whether or not they choose to participate in the scheme. And as mentioned, it is coming out of their own money if they wish to participate in it. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Doran, and Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to speak in support of the motion. The first thing I did when I heard it was coming was to ask, would it cost the council any money? The answer was a clear no. Would it save the council any money? Yes, there's a potential for that. And as Councillor Doran has pointed out, I have so many constituents who'd be absolutely amazing councillors in the future, but perhaps they don't all have access. There are barriers, financial in other ways. And if we can make changes like this, to me it's a win-win, and it enables a huge range of people to become councillors in the future who may not otherwise feel they have the opportunity. Thank you.
Good pardon. Thank you, colleagues. I think we're at the stage now where I'll get some advice on the next step.
Can I just clarify?
Mrs Watson.
Yeah, it was just to clarify a point. I think Councillor Gregg, you'd mentioned the counselling scheme. That's not within the remit of the motion, just to confirm that point.
The Employee Assistance Programme
Yes.
is the one I was referencing. Is that not?
Yeah, that's my understanding from Mrs Faulkner.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Meakin to sum up.
Councillor Meakin, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Provost. I won't say very much. Basically, the only thing I want to say is, why would you not share something that effectively has no cost? No cost to Angus Council. Surely it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe at this time, unless anybody goes to the contrary, that we should be at the vote. I'll leave that with Mrs Forsyth.
Thank you, Provost. The motion by Councillor Meakin, seconded by Councillor Wan, is to approve the terms of the motion relating to extending employee benefits to include elected members, as detailed within the agenda for today's meeting. The amendment by Councillor Cheap, seconded by Councillor Beattie, is to reject the motion. Please vote motion or amendment, and Mrs Stewart will do the roll call.
Provost. Motion. Deputy Provost.
Amendment.
Councillor Beattie.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell. Amendment. Councillor Boyd.
No vote.
Councillor Braze.
Amendment.
Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Cruikshanks. Councillor Devine. Amendment. Councillor Dorn.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Durno.
No vote.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Motion.
Councillor Gall.
Motion.
Councillor Gregg.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor Meakin.
Motion.
Oh, sorry, Councillor McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Meakin.
Motion.
Councillor Melville.
Amendment.
Councillor Gavin Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Louise Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Proctor.
Motion.
Councillor Scott.
Motion.
Councillor Shepherd.
Motion.
Councillor Speed.
Motion.
Councillor Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Wan. And Councillor Whiteside.
Amendment.
There is 17 votes for the motion, 9 votes for the amendment and 2 no votes. Therefore, the motion is carried. Thank you, colleagues. We now move on, I believe, to the next motion, which is the Town Centre First Policy, and I would invite Councillor Scott to speak to her motion and ask her at this point if she has a seconder.
I do. My seconder is Councillor Doran. Thank you, Provost.
Go ahead.
I've not really got much to say, to be honest, because you heard it all in the budget, because Councillor Doran and I brought this forward in our alternative budget. So basically, our high streets are the beating heart of our communities. This new approach will help breathe life into them once more, providing support for local businesses to thrive. It means the health of town centres is put at the heart of proportionate and best value decision making, seeking to deliver best local outcomes regarding available resources to priority town centre sites, and encouraging vibrancy, equality and diversity. This is not a new idea, as I stated prior in the last meeting. Aberdeenshire Council, our neighbours, they implemented this. They have won awards on this policy, and both Councillor Dornan and I think it's time that we put a focus on our town centres.
I'm not against road closures. I'll pay particular attention to Councillor Gall and Councillor Stewart's declaration, transparency. Not against that at all in any way, but I think if it's planned and the businesses know, I think they can participate in whatever event is happening. So it's not to stop any of those things. It's so that we work positively to boost our high streets and protect our businesses. Thank you.
Councillor Scott, can we ask Councillor Don?
Thank you. So yeah, as mentioned, this policy puts town centres at the heart of our decision making. Our decisions as councillors and the work of council officers is guided by all the policies that are in place, and so it makes sense to have one that is supportive of our town centres. I love our towns in Angus. Everyone here loves our towns in Angus, and so we can then, through this policy, do all we can to empower them and make all the decisions that are appropriate and don't inadvertently cause any harm to our town centres.
Thank you, Councillor Don. At this point, I'm going to ask, because I'm going to ask Councillor MacDonald just to stay for a minute. I'm going to get your comment in though. Can I ask if there's any questions? In that case, I'm going to go to comment and ask you first.
Thank you, Provost. And as Councillor Scott suggested, that this was brought up at the budget, and immediately after the budget, I said that I backed this, and I'm pleased to say today, and I'm glad to see it's on the agenda, because we also back this. And as part of looking at how we work with our town centres, and as the convener of the Communities Committee, I've spoken with our senior officers about how we can look at tidying up our town centres, cleaning them, having an impact directly on them, having walkthroughs, looking at old signage, like in Forth, has got a COVID sign up next to Farm Foods. How do we get that sort of stuff addressed in line with all of these things that Councillor Scott and Councillor Doran's brought forward? Councillor Cruikshanks has been in touch about getting our Broth High Street cleaned, and that's another thing that we're going to look at. So as part of this Town First, Centre First policy, I think that, and I'd like to see the whole chamber aligned on it, because I think it's really good. I'm not really sure why we've not done it before, and just really welcome the fact that this has come onto the agenda today.
We've got Councillor Gall before I'll go into anything else. Councillor Melville, I'll get you in a minute.
Thank you, Provost. I just want to say thank you to Councillor Scott and Councillor Doran for bringing this forward. As I've mentioned, I'm already part of a group in Montrose. There's a group also headed by Peter Stirling in Arbroath. We've already seen huge success from Jill Patterson and Audrey Meachie in Montrose from their hard work from Angus Economic Development delivering for us. The High Street isn't dead. We often hear about people talking about the bygone days of what happened in 50, 60 years ago. Society changes, our culture's changed, and we have to adapt to that. You go to shopping centres and they're fantastic, amazing parking, but they're empty sheds full of generic stuff. There's no heart, there's no soul, there's no character. They're just at the edge of a town. The life and the beating heart is still in the centres of our high streets and our town centres, and people want to be there. Angus is not a big county, and we're incredibly lucky that we have the East Coast line, and Montrose's success is Brechin's success. Arbroath's success is for Carnoustie, Montefieth, and it's a ripple, and we can share that. So this is a great motion. It's something that I know every single person in this chamber will be behind, because it's hyper-local. It really does help, so hopefully everyone backs it, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gall. Councillor Melville.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. This is a very good policy. It ties in really well with the administration's decision to scrap town centre parking charges completely, as well as rejoin Dundee and Angus Chamber of Commerce to promote growth. Town centres are, as we've heard, and should be, the central pillar of Angus's local economy. I'm really glad that Councillor Scott and Councillor Doran didn't let this go after the budget meeting, and I'll be supporting it.
I sense a bit of consensus breaking out. Well done. Councillor Boyd.
Councillor Melville beat me to most of what I was saying. Back to the budget, I would have been fully supportive of this, and I'm glad to see it back so soon thereafter. At my first meeting, I always said, when I was the Provost, that if anyone brings some very good motions forward, of course I would back it. It doesn't matter which side of the chamber you're on at that point in time. So I will be fully supporting this, and I think it's excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. And I must say sorry to Councillor Bayes. I didn't realise you were before Councillor Bayes. Boyd, can I have you now, please?
Oh, that's okay. Happy to make way for Councillor Boyd. No, fully supportive of this, and particularly from an economic development point of view. You know, if we want to attract business to Angus, we've got to make it actually live up to this idea that we make it a good place to live, work and do business. And I see this as quite a crucial aspect to it. If you want to attract business to Angus, business needs people to come and support that business. Be it staff for big business who might need to live in the town, or be it small entrepreneurs starting up somewhere. We've got our bit to play in every borough, and each borough might have different situations, different aspects. But regardless of that, it's good for our towns. What's good for the town centre is good for the people who live in the towns. To make a real difference costs money. And I think all of us who aspire to have better town centres, more money spent keeping them clean and tidy, need to really think about that in the run-up to next year's budget. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Provost. And I'd just like to, again, thank Councillor Scott and Councillor Thorne for bringing this up. And I'm speaking on behalf of maybe the more rural, the inland boroughs in Kerrymuir. And a few years ago in the previous administration, we had the cars regeneration scheme, and we thought this was going to bring some life back into the town centre. Unfortunately, COVID kind of put paid to that, and I do feel that this is a second chance to go on and go on from the cars regeneration. So I really do welcome it and hope that it is as successful as it appears it could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Councillor Dunno.
Thanks, Provost. Can I have some assurances that any funds that come available for town centre regeneration are actually spent on town centre regeneration? Because formerly we've had funds before that were spent on a crazy golf at Arbroath, and also money that we had 500,000 before was given to Business Gateway to distribute, which we have never had a report back to say how they spent the money. So can I have assurances that any other funds that come available will actually be spent on town centres and to be proven to be spent on town centres? Thank you.
Can I take some advice on that? Can somebody answer that? Mr Lorimer, you're on.
Sounds like one for me, Provost. Thank you. Yes, so we have arrangements in place so that any funds that do come where it requires a decision about whether the council accepts the funding or how the funding is to be used, we now have a grant subcommittee that looks at that if it's out with the core funding. So that would be an opportunity for members to influence and say how they would see those funds being spent, where we have the flexibility. We don't always have the flexibility. Sometimes we're told that the money has to be spent in particular ways. But I do take the point that you make, Councillor Durno, in terms of should the funding come available, that it can be directed towards, and having the policy in place will be helpful in that regard, I would suggest.
Thank you, Mr Lorimer. And I really would like to ask Mrs Patterson, Jo Patterson, I think she's intimated she would like to speak. Mrs Patterson.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Durno, for your question. It was just to clarify that the funding that you referred to from Business Gateway was part of the local authority COVID economic recovery funding, and there was a report on that to elected members and also elected member briefing on the outcome of that, and I'd be happy to share further detail of that with you.
Thank you, Mrs Patterson. Anything further, Doctor? I'm going to do this again, Doctor. Councillor Dunn.
No, thanks. And I'm sure that the new town board and the community council in Arbroath would probably like to be involved in any town centre regeneration plans as well. Thanks.
Yep, and I'm sure you'll make sure that happens. Okay. I need to... Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, this policy is definitely right up my street. Yeah, no, in all seriousness, I think, yeah, our high streets, I do try and spend as much time as I can on Arbroath High Street and indeed other high streets throughout Angus when I'm in town. I think our kind of retailers, our businesses on the high street have been hit time and time again with various events over the last few years. And I think we really do need to do all we can to help them. So yeah, fully support this, and well done to Councillor Donnan and Scott.
So now I'm going to go to the rhetorical question, I hope. Is the motion agreed? Agreed. Well done. Now the next one, item 6, appointments to committees. The first one is the Integrated Joint Board. We have Councillor Beattie and Councillor Bell to nominate their proxies. Would they be doing that, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Brace, please.
Councillor Brace nominated by Councillor Beattie. Accepted.
And I'd like to nominate Councillor Whiteside. Thanks.
Accepted. The Grants Subcommittee of the Policy and Resources Committee. The Council is asked to note that Councillor Whiteside has intimated her resignation from the Grants Subcommittee. The Council is asked to fill this vacancy, so we'll ask for nominations and then ask for a seconder. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I'd like to nominate Councillor Beattie.
Councillor Whiteside.
I'd like to second that.
Is that okay, Councillor Beattie?
Yes, Provost.
Can I ask Councillor to agree? Right, now, Tayside Contracts Joint Committee. The Council is asked to note that Councillor Gregg has intimated his resignation from the Tayside Contracts Joint Committee. The Council has asked, and I can see that before I get to finish this, Councillor Vaughan has his hand up. Are you likely to give us a nomination, sir?
Yeah, we would like to nominate Councillor Jack Cruikshank, and seconded by Councillor Ross Gregg. Oh, sorry, Councillor Craig Fotheringham.
Craig.
Apologies.
No problem. Is that agreed, gentlemen? Is that agreed, Council? Yeah. Okay. The next one is the Councillor Community Wellbeing Board. The Council has asked to note that Councillor Brace has intimated his resignation from the Community Wellbeing Board. The Council has asked to fill the vacancy, and I'm asking for nominations and then a seconder.
Thank you, Provost. Could I nominate Councillor Whiteside?
And a seconder, Councillor Devine, can I take her this time? And Councillor Whiteside, is that okay? Everybody okay with that? Anything else? No? You're fine? The next one is the Council is advised that 2 vacancies remain on the Carnoustie Golf Links Management Committee. The Council is asked to fill these vacancies, so I am now asking for nominations and then for a seconder. Colleagues, Councillor Duff, and then...
Yeah, thanks, Provost. The administration do not propose to fill any of those vacancies. Councillor Cheap is on the Golf Links Management Committee. He's also, of course, a local member, and we don't think it's now appropriate to fill any further positions from our point of view.
Relations point of view, can I ask across the way, Councillor Wan?
Likewise, we're not intending appointing anybody. Thank you. Or nominating anybody.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wan. Everybody agreed? Number 7, a Treasury Management Strategy Statement 25-26. I must apologise, I've got addressing it in from the dentist and I am lisping. Sorry about that. It'll sort itself out over the next couple of days. Mr Lorimer.
Thank you very much, Provost, and good afternoon, elected members. This report sets out the proposed Treasury management strategy for the next financial year. The strategy covers our proposed approach to borrowing to fund the capital budget that was agreed a couple of weeks ago in the budget setting meeting, and how we'll manage our cash. Now, Treasury management is, I think it's fair to say, one of the more specialist and technical aspects of the work that the finance team does. But I hope the briefings and so on that's been provided over, well, basically since the election, have been helpful in demystifying that to some extent. The strategy, as always, is really focused on four things: managing cash flows, make sure we've got enough money in the bank to pay our staff, our suppliers, etc. Borrowing, trying to figure out when the best time to borrow is, and generating income on any surplus cash that we have. And the fourth aspect is managing the risks around all of that. This report has to come to Council, though it's also going to go to Scrutiny and Audit Committee. It has to come to Council for approval, and it also has to cover quite a bit of detail, quite a bit of technical detail to ensure compliance with the various statutory codes. The strategy is not specific about how much we'll borrow and when, because it can't be. We need flexibility to respond to market circumstances in relation to that. So that's one aspect. A couple of things just to highlight. On page 19 of the combined papers, table 1, that sets out the Council's current debt position and our projected future borrowing requirements. And members will see from that table that we have a significant amount of new borrowing to do, headroom as it's referred to in the report, over the next few years. We are continuing to delay any significant amount of new borrowing on the scale that will ultimately require, on the basis that interest rates are still expected to continue to fall. They have not been falling as fast, as quickly as we would have expected or hoped, but we're managing that risk by taking any borrowing that we do need over a shorter period in the meantime. And then lastly, Provost, in terms of the investment strategy, we're targeting a rate of return of 4.35% for next year. We think that will generate income of around 1.4 million on the investment of our surplus cash, which is equivalent to around about a 2% increase in council tax. So it's a significant activity that we undertake on a daily basis. The report recommendations is that Council are asked to approve the strategy and the prudential indicators that are set out in Annex D of the report, and happy to take any questions as always, Provost.
I have Councillor Devine, Councillor Doran and Councillor Bell so far.
Thanks, Provost. Mr Lorimer, I'm imagining that the introduction of IFRS 16 on page 16 has caused a fair amount of work for your department, and it's obviously quite a complex area. I wonder if you think it would be useful for us as elected members to have a little bit more demystification on this one and provide a briefing for us at some point, because I have spoken to you and you have said it's really complex, so it's not something that I want you to answer now. If that would be helpful, I think that would be helpful.
Happy to come back to yourself, Provost. Yes, happy to organise that. It is a very technical area. It's a new area. It's actually something that's been in place in most other sectors for a few years now. So it's coming into the local government sector for this financial year. So our accounts for the current financial year will need to reflect those new standards. And happy to arrange a short briefing. I might have to offer cakes for that one, I think, but I'll make the offer available just to provide a little bit more detail on that. I think I'd actually given an undertaking to do that some time ago. The actual introduction of the standard was delayed because of the pandemic and various other things.
Thank you, Mr Lorimer, and you heard it here, Councillor Devine, he's bringing cakes.
Is that me that's to bring the cakes?
You can fight it out.
Okay.
Councillor Doran.
Thank you. It was just a question relating to table 4 on page 23 of the combined papers. Just around, so this table is summarising the repayments that are due on borrowing commitments, as far as I understand it. And repayments due within 2 to 5 years, there's a higher number within that category of around 25 million. So I just wanted to just seek reassurance that as part of this, there's no risk involved with that, as that seems higher than the other years.
Yeah, again, through you, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Doran. Yes, so that 20 million for the general fund that you see there, or the 25 million across the three different elements, that covers a 4-year period, effectively years 2 to 5. We take all of that into account in the long-term affordability work that we do, and there was a report to Council as part of the budget setting around that. So we look at the profile of those repayments so that we know what we have to have in place in relation to budgets. And I've described it, I think, previously. It can be quite lumpy depending on when repayments are due, but we're on the case on that one, so we'll manage that appropriately.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lorimer, and I'm not forgetting Councillor Bell, but she has indicated she no longer wants to speak. Thank you. Councillor Melville.
Thank you, Provost. I wonder if Mr. Lorimer could set out the Council's position in terms of PFI debt. How much are we having to repay each year, and over how many further years are we going to have to repay these projects?
Again, through yourself, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Melville. That is a big question. There's actually quite a lot of detailed disclosures in the Council's accounts that cover all of our repayments. You mentioned debt. Now, the payments that we make in relation to our PPP and PFI projects cover not only debt, but also some of the operational costs. Our current expenditure across all of our PFI, PPP projects is around 21 million per annum. That covers both debt and operational costs. So that includes the A92 dual carriageway, includes Forfar Carnoustie schools. All of these projects, the lifespan differs because of when they started, but there is a full disclosure of all of that within the Council's accounts. I'm happy to come back separately in terms of any further detail, though, Councillor Melville, on that one.
Thanks, Mr. Lorimer. I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer. In that case, we come to any kind of comments before we hopefully will get into the recommendations. Councillor Brace.
Yes, thanks, Provost. My comment is just that I'm grateful to Ian Lorimer and his team for the amount of effort they put into informing elected members how this all works, to demystify it, because it certainly needs a lot of that. So very grateful for that. I do feel that I have a good enough understanding of how this all works to be able to have confidence that you and your team are doing this properly and in a manner that doesn't expose this council to more risk than that elected members would be comfortable with. So I would just point to where are we? 9.1, where we're speaking about 1.4 million pounds of income here, and you know, getting it as close to right, spot on, perfect, which we're never going to do, but the closer you can get to that within a risk appetite for risk, you know, you could be looking at hundreds of thousands of pounds of income for Angus Council that can be spent on other things that we want to provide. So thanks to Ian and his team.
Thank you, Councillor Brace and Councillor. Sorry, Mr. Sorry, I'll go over that again. Mr. Lorimer, thank you very much. I've not given you another designation today, thank the Lord. We go to recommendations, colleagues. Could you look at the recommendations here, 1 and 2, and give me an indication of approval? Well done, thank you. Item 8. Before I go into item 8, it's quite hot in here at times. If anybody needs a 5-minute break, then please do so. Councillor Scott. I think we should stop for a minute then. A minute, it'll be 5 minutes.
Could we stop the live stream, please?
We're back in business, colleagues. Item 8 on the agenda is the remuneration of councillors. And I'm going to ask Mr Lorimer to introduce this report. Mr Lorimer.
Thank you, Provost. This report provides an update on remuneration for elected members following changes in the Scottish regulations which cover the remuneration for councillors. Now, as is explained in the report, the Scottish Government asked the Scottish Local Authorities Remuneration Committee, SLARC, to undertake an independent review of councillor remuneration. SLARC had previously last reported in 2011. Now, SLARC was asked to review the remuneration of all councillors and to consider whether present levels of remuneration for ordinary and senior councillors were appropriate for the current context. So that was the remit the SLARC were given. The Scottish Government and COSLA have accepted the majority of the recommendations made by SLARC and the new regulations covering councillor remuneration effective from the 1st of April 2025 have now been passed by the Scottish Parliament. Appendix 1 sets out for information the updated remuneration structure for the Council following the changes that Council agreed in relation to the Housing Committee in December. And Appendix 2 effectively replicates that structure but updates it with the new salary levels that will be effective from the 1st of April 2025 based on the new regulations. I do need to point out one correction in relation to the report. In the appendices, there's a section headed External Posts. They're just there for information, but the appendices show Councillor Bell as the chair of the Angus Integration Joint Board, but as of January this year, Councillor Bell is now the Vice Chair. So just to log that correction, Provost. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr Lorimer. And colleagues, can we go to questions? I see no hands. Would any of you like to make a comment? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Provost. I just wanted to reflect and acknowledge staff side concerns around this, but I would like to put it in a bit of context. When I first came into Angus Council as an elected member, I, with my eyes open, was elected and took an immediate drop of salary in the region of about £3,000. I am really concerned about every party's ability to attract people into standing as candidates in the next elections in 2027. And I think in terms of broadening diversity and equality of access to local democracy, I actually support the recommendations in the paper and was interviewed by SLARC along with another councillor in Angus Council around some of the challenges. So we need to be able to recognise and value this role and encourage a much wider range of diversity. If I was a single parent with childcare issues, there's no way I could afford to carry out or even anticipate carrying out going through an election for what is very precarious job, and I fully appreciate there's no job permanent these days, but I think it is time that we reset the balance on the differential between different spheres of government and encourage people to step up to the plate and take part in local democracy. It's really important. We're the operational arm of the Scottish Government, and we need to value and recognise that for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Provost. We are here as stewards of public trust, entrusted with the responsibility to lead with integrity, fairness and compassion. It is in this spirit that I must address the proposed increase in councillor remuneration, a proposal I cannot in good conscience accept. Our communities are faced with unprecedented challenges. Families across Angus are grappling with the rise in living cost of living. with a 5.2% rise in council tax, rise in rent, council rent, an 11% rise in council tax, and an energy increase of 6.4%. Local government workers, the backbone of our public services, are being offered a mere 3% pay increase, and vital services are stretched to their limits. To accept such a significant increase at this time, like this, would send the wrong message. Leadership is not about privilege, it's about sacrifice. It's about standing shoulder to shoulder with the people that we represent, sharing in their challenges and working tirelessly to alleviate their burdens. In my view, we need to advocate for a more equitable distribution of resources and fight for fair pay for our local government workers, for greater investment within our communities, and for policies that uplift those who are most in need. However, this is not just a matter of policy, it's a matter of principle. It is a personal decision to decline this proposal, and although I cannot deny that this increase would assist me greatly each month, I cannot detach myself from the reality and the struggles faced by the people of Angus. I do agree that there needs to be a fairer amount set, as many of us do put much more than a full-time shift in each week. However, I cannot accept this in this way at this time. I will certainly be speaking to officers to make alternative arrangements that are in line with the workforce's 3% and any future settlement, which is why I can support the workforce scheme earlier, particularly if it can bring a saving to this council. I will also seek advice on how I can ensure that the money that I don't take can be distributed for charitable purposes for those in need within my ward, and how I can go about achieving this for the people of Arbroath East and Winnan.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Colleagues, any more comments? Councillor Doran.
It's more just a clarification based on that last statement there. My understanding is that the base rate for councillors is set as approved by the external review that was carried out, and that the only thing that could be subject to change by us is any increases for additional roles that people might play within the council. So could I just seek some clarification on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. And Mr Lorimer.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. It may be that Mrs Watson wants to come in on this as well, but the regulations provide that any councillor may renounce the receipt of any remuneration payable in terms of the regulations in whole or in part, in which case the remuneration is not payable by the local authority. So there is a flexibility built within the regulations for an elected member to choose to do that. What wouldn't be possible is, unless the council decided unilaterally, is to change those by a decision of council.
Thank you, Provost. I kind of empathise with what Councillor Speed has said. I also take cognizance of what Councillor Bell said about getting people in. Now, maybe people of my generation, there's a few of us here, I'm probably the only one, but we sort of, our dictum's always been service before self, and I still feel that, and I have an unease when I see, what we as elected members have been offered and what the workforce have been offered. Now, I believe I've spoke to some council officers and they told me it's still under discussion. So I'll keep my powder dry until that discussion is ended. But I do sort of empathise with what Councillor Lois Speed has said. Thank you.
I do empathise with what Councillor Speed has said, and it seems a little over 2 years ago when I was Provost that I took a £10,000 cut in the tar. I got rid of the car. I reduced the expenses down from 17,000 or 7,000 a year. I think we both of us did it less for about 800 or whatever. So I totally agree with you, Lois, and I think I did it well, very well ago, over 2 years ago. Thank you.
Provost, might I suggest we have a 5-minute recess?
So I was noticing earlier when you were switching.
Okay, sorry about that. We just had a wee glitch there. We've sorted out with our expert team. Thank you. But we were at the stage of asking for your agreement to the recommendations, which are there in front of you. And I would ask you, please, could I have your agreement on the recommendations as stated on your papers? Thank you. Now, item 9, the Scottish Government consultation, local authority, general power of competence. And I will ask Mrs Watson to introduce the report. Mrs Watson.
Thank you, Provost. This report provides details of a consultation being undertaken by Scottish Government on a local authority general power of competence. The consultation seeks to establish what functions, beyond those already conferred by statute, local authorities in Scotland may wish to pursue and whether new legislation is required. Council is being asked to approve a proposed response for submission as contained in Appendix 2. As members will see, the proposed response states that there are limitations and uncertainties in the scope of the existing Scottish power to advance well-being, and the existing legislative framework can prevent new means of raising funds to deliver what councils may regard as services which would advance well-being. Furthermore, change is needed in the balance of funding and how much income councils can raise locally in addition to the grant funding received. Service transformation is required and there needs to be flexibility to enable local authorities to do this, but this must be balanced against the requirement for local authorities to focus on delivering their statutory duties. The proposed response for your consideration today concludes that a general power of competence has the potential to give councils the specific legal basis and confidence to extend their services and support beyond the arena traditionally seen as the responsibility of local authorities, and that this may assist in building greater economic growth and resilience in local communities. Members are asked to give consideration to that proposed response, provide any comment, and thereafter to determine whether you approve that response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Watson. We will then go, if there are any, I would ask members to give me consideration of questions. We've got Councillor Dunlop.
Thanks, Provost. It's more of a comment if you want to take questions first.
It should be really beyond questions. Councillor Devine first.
Thanks, Convener. Provost, sorry. Thank you very much for doing all this consultation. It's not a short consultation, and I agree with so much of it. The question I have is actually on question 4, where you're talking about difficulties or barriers to local authorities actually working together. We are being encouraged to do this, and I know that we do some collaboration with other councils. So could you elaborate a little on the barriers which hinder this collaboration? I'm glad you've made the point there, but I wonder if you have, if you can't just now, I'll be happy to have it later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, certainly in terms of some of the legislation, in terms of shared services or joint resources, there are some restrictions in terms of what we're able to do. I know that Mr Lorimer, putting him on the spot, had also contributed to the consultation. And do you want to add anything? No, nothing further to that.
Provost, sure. Yeah, one of the big challenges is that all organisations there's very strict governance arrangements and accountability arrangements for individual organisations, and that can make it a challenge sometime in doing things that are more radical, perhaps more risky, at least initially, and that's why that comment is made in relation to question 4. If it was possible through the review of this area of legislation to make some of that easier, or to kind of oil the wheels or remove grip from the system in relation to whether it's joint working collaboration, those type of things. But as things stand, we are always accountable for how we use Angus Council funds and resources, and that can sometimes be a a challenge in terms of those accountability things, which are there for all the right reasons, but it can make that more of a challenge when you're doing things that are a bit different.
Well, I think it's good that you've made that point there in that consultation. Thank you.
I have Councillor Bell, and perhaps ahead of you, Councillor Dunn, because I think she might have a question, and if she does, your comment would need to wait. Is that okay? Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a huge amount of work gone into this, and my mind is firing off in all sorts of directions about the potential. But I particularly wanted to pick up on questions 5 and 6 around wellbeing powers. And I just thought it might be helpful if we could tease out some possibilities there. What sort of things are we talking about there? Because as statutory services budgets are becoming more and more constrained, the importance of prevention and early intervention is becoming exponentially important. And I'd be really interested, even just to get high-level possibilities in the discussion today, just to help our thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. So I think, as you'll see from the proposed response, including at question 1, indeed, sort of reference there to that there are some uncertainties at the moment around the power to advance wellbeing. So when it was introduced in 2003, that was intended to be a first resort, but actually in practice over the past 20 or so years, it's been used more as a last resort, where there's been some reticence to use it if there's not a specific accompanying statutory power. So certainly it's probably not being used as well as it could be, and I think part of this consultation is looking at feedback from authorities on their experience of the power to advance wellbeing and whether or not different legislation could assist. Because I think at the moment with the power to advance wellbeing, the courts have taken quite a restrictive approach, certainly, and also with the provision that it has to advance wellbeing in the local area, which I think, yes, for some of the things you're talking about, that would be simple enough to evidence, but in other things that we might want to do, generating income to supplement services has not been seen as a power to advance wellbeing of the local area, even where it can be used, as I say, to then be able to assist in delivering the services directly to the area. So there's case law from England around the power to advance wellbeing, which said you couldn't generate income to then be used to provide your statutory services. So I think whilst we have the power to advance wellbeing, as we've put in the draft response, it's not working as effectively as it could. It's difficult for authorities to use it, to rely on, to go forward and do certain things, and especially with the sort of linkage with the local people in the local area as well, that has been quite a restriction. So the proposed response that we've prepared is putting forward some of the concerns in relation to the power to advance wellbeing and suggesting that some alternative is probably needed to give more specific powers, so that there is something much more black and white that we can use to do certain things at the moment without the sort of ambiguity that the wellbeing power has.
Councillor Bell, are you happy with that very comprehensive answer?
Yeah, and I was just thinking that as Mrs. Watson was speaking, that maybe in one of the boxes that needs to be beefed up a wee bit. Thanks.
Can that be considered, Mrs. Watson?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my mic's not on. Well done. That wasn't a question. If there are no more questions, then we should go to Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Dunn, we do have another question at the front here.
Sorry, Paulus, I was going to make a comment.
No, well, you'll have to wait now, Councillor Dunn, because Councillor Dunn had her hand up ages ago. I will take it after Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I am so excited about seeing this paper. I have been talking about the council being more commercial for the last 8 years, and I was getting about a brick wall about it's not under our statutory rights to do things. When you see other councils throughout England being able to make money out of projects that we could be doing with the land and the assets that we have, I'm really looking forward to this being implemented and seeing if the council can make some money that we can actually spend on our local events and anything really. So well done. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Dunno and Councillor Duff, and then we have Councillor Melville after Councillor Duff.
Thanks very much, Provost. Yeah, I mean, I thank the officers for the consultation response. I've read that pretty thoroughly. I think described it as cautiously supportive, which I think is a good place to be. It was discussed, I know, at a COSLA meeting recently. Local authorities across Scotland, I think, are generally supportive of this. They would like additional powers. The current rules are a little bit restrictive on councils. I think there is clearly caution about unwise speculation, and we've seen one or two councils in England coming croppers when they've invested in real estate, car parks, shopping centres, etc., and these have gone badly. But I think cautiously, I think we are cautiously supportive. I'm happy with that, and it does give us, as Councillor Darnell has said, it might give us more powers to do more things. And we wouldn't have to look at what we can't do and actually think, well, we can do certain things. So, yeah, I'm very supportive of it, and I think we should be. And I thank the officers for the responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Melville.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, like many others, I want to thank the officers for their time on this. It is very comprehensive. I think proposals which extend more power to local authorities, particularly to generate revenue, are certainly most welcome. Because we do need more power to invest in our communities. I support it, and I very much hope that the Scottish Government will take cognizance of our response.
Thank you, Councillor Melville. Come out of the woodwork now. Councillor Doran, then Councillor Breeze.
Thank you. I wanted to voice a similar message to Councillor Duff around cautious optimism around this. I think it provides an opportunity to give councils more opportunity and make the most of their local areas and assets that they do have, but in a cautious approach that really measures the risk involved with this. So, yeah, really pleased to see this and the responses that have been put together for it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. Councillor Breeze.
Yes, I welcome this too, and I think this is really good step in the right direction. Councillor Duff mentioned all those councils that have had disastrous consequences to their investment decisions, and they, of course, are highlighted right across the media, and with great glee, because the media loves to give a council a kicking. But we never hear about the councils who have made good investment decisions and have engaged with commercialisation and have brought money into the council to spend on frontline services. So, you know, it's not all bad. We just hear about all the bad bits. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Breeze. I think we can safely say that we're now at the stage of asking you to agree these recommendations. No? Do we not? I'm going to have to ask for just a wee bit of time over that. I wasn't here. Mrs Watson to tell you what she's trying to tell me, and I'm not getting it.
Not at all, Provost, thank you. It was just to say, in terms of Councillor Bell's comment, in terms of maybe adding a little bit about the power to advance wellbeing and the weaknesses that might be perceived with that, we would add that in if members were happy to, and that will be part of, so that the recommendation is to approve the draft response, and it would be with that element added in a little bit if members were happy.
I guess really with the caveat that's just been eloquently given there, can I ask you to approve these recommendations, colleagues? Thank you. Then we can go on to scheme of governance review, and again, Mrs Watson, I'm going to have to ask you to speak again.
Thank you, Provost. This report presents proposed changes to standing orders and terms of reference following a review 12 months on from the introduction of the new scheme of governance from the 1st of January last year. It provides details of the views of the Governance Member Officer Working Group and asks Council to determine how to proceed on 3 outstanding points in relation to standing orders on which the MOG did not reach consensus. We propose to take questions on the report now on both the standing orders and terms of reference element, and then we would intend to consider recommendation 1 and those 3 outstanding points thereafter, when Mrs Forsyth will take you through each of them at a time. So that would be how we propose, Provost.
Watson, if I could ask colleagues if there are any questions on the standing orders, etc., if you can intimate. First one is Councillor Duff.
It's really just a comment, just to flag up that on 62 brackets 2, a notice of a motion.
Councillor Duff, do you have a notice of motion? Do you have a seconder?
Provost.
Councillor MacDonald.
Indeed. Councillor Duff, we are going to go through everything. Do you mind if we just pick you up at the end? Or just
absolutely, yeah. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chief.
Councillor Chief.
Thanks, Provost. Just to, again, picking up at the end, but I have a notice of an amendment to the overall recommendations at the end as well. Thank you.
We are still on questions. Is it just me or is this complicated today? Any questions, colleagues? I'm going to put you to my colleague, Mrs Forsyth. Mrs Forsyth.
Thank you, Provost. So in relation to 6.1 of the report, there are 3 elements where the MOG did not reach consensus, and so those proposals and discussions are detailed there for Council to consider. So in relation to 14.2.1, order of debate, a member of the MOG proposed an amendment to the effect that only 1 question and 1 supplementary question may be asked. Currently, the wording is a question or questions. So Council is asked to consider that element and whether they would seek to amend the current standing order to the proposal of 1 question and 1 supplementary. I think as noted in the narrative there, the requirement for flexibility was considered, so that would be an item for Council to consider at this time. And I think we're just going to go through and vote on them one by one, just so it makes it a little bit easier.
We'd have to have a motion and an amendment on each of these.
What we would need is a motion and an amendment in each of them, and we'll have questions. I know this does seem very, very convoluted, I have to admit. I think unless there's a first question, then I'll let them go to comment. What would yours be, Councillor Begg? Is yours a question?
I was a motion, proposing a motion.
Right, we'll get that now then. Sorry. Are we going to listen to Councillor Gregg's motion at the moment? Because we were waiting for Councillor Duff, remember, at the end. So I think we have to be consistent.
So that one will, Councillor Duff's.
Sorry, Provost, if I could just come in. Councillor Duff's motion in relation to 36.2 will come at that point. So at the moment we're considering 14.2.1 in relation to the number of questions that may be asked. So I don't know whether members wish to make comment on that before we have a motion and an amendment, if there is a motion and an amendment, or whether it's just the status quo.
Right, are people understanding this? Yes. Oh, you're better than me.
Can I just come in and say, I mean, I was on the MOG, And I kind of felt we did have consensus at the end of just having flexibility, and that it was up to the convener to decide whether somebody could have a couple of questions, or if there were too many questions for one person, they would actually kind of cut it down. But I thought the flexibility thing was there. You agree with?
I think, Provost, if that is the general consensus of council, we obviously put that in the narrative because it was quite a detailed discussion around that element. So I'm happy if there's consensus just to leave it as the status quo, that we leave that.
Councillor Vaughan, do you want to speak about that, just that last remark? Go ahead.
If that's okay, Provost, yeah, it was just to say that that was my interpretation of it as well, and I don't think we were going to be proposing anything else. It was just to make sure that that was what was going to happen, that Ross was going to, Councillor Gregg was going to raise. So there is no motion if that's what we're agreeing to.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll just bring in you, Councillor MacDonald.
Well, I don't really need to come in then, because I think as a convener of a committee that flexibility is valued, and what I've tried to do in the committee is open up as much to questions as you can. But if you do run out of time, or if there is pressure, you can always go back to the specific standing order and go on questions. So that flexibility, I think, is really important, because sometimes when you're eking out the debate, it's nice to hear that view extended a little bit more. So I'm in full agreement with what's been said.
Excellent. Councillor Boyd, did you have something to put in
it was
there?
just I'd like to agree with both what Councillor Wan and Councillor MacDonald have said. I think that flexibility is there. Our meetings are the right length or at some of the times. I think at one meeting a little bit past, I had said, look, anyone can ask any question of an officer at any time. It doesn't need to be done in the full blaze of this thing. That's why, so I've always felt that way. Good debate comes from councillors' comments, not necessarily questions in the chamber. And the one I can remember, Ronnie will remember this, or that, in the end of the day, if you run out of questions, you have someone else to ask. So I shouldn't go off script. The majority of councillors don't ask questions in the chamber, and you can ask one of your colleagues to ask the questions on your behalf again. And this has been the protocol for many years and many administrations. And Ronnie will remember me running around the chamber and handing my laptop to Councillor Cheap so that he could ask the questions. So we've got to get that balance right of questions. So I'm very pleased to see that Derek Wan and Mark MacDonald have agree that that's the way we should move forward. And you as well. Sorry, Councillor.
I think we've got an agreement there, but you can tell me otherwise. Thank you. Again, because there's a lot to go through still, to Mrs Forsyth.
Thank you, Provost. So moving on to the next element, which is 18.1, closure of debate. The MOG considered the removal of the wording, sorry, I just lost my page there, for any member who has not spoken. So to remove the words who has not spoken, so that would allow any member of the chamber to move for closure of debate.
Questions. Councillor Cowdy, you may question. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to get some clarification on what is the rationale for only allowing someone who hasn't spoken to then call for a closure of debate? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdy. So the rationale would be that if you have already spoken, but then you called for closure of the debate, that might be seen as unfair because you've had your opportunity to speak, and then closing the debate for the others. So that the provision at the moment is if you haven't yet spoken, you can move to close debate, just for fairness purposes, I suppose, so that if you haven't spoken but you're content to move the closure of debate, that's probably a more fair position than if you have spoken and then look to move it.
Councillor Cowdy, do you want a supplementary?
Yeah,
to that?
it's just a supplementary. Thank you so much. That makes, I understand the rationale there. I guess, would it perhaps not be fairer to take the decision about closing the debate completely away from all the elected members? Because it makes me twitchy that you have to not say anything if you want to eventually bring something to a close if it's going on for ages and ages. Thank you.
We'll just have a little conflab about that for a minute, please.
I think just to clarify for Councillor Cowdy, there's no proposal to remove the element, you know, the 8 members have to speak. So it would just be after that particular point.
Okay, I'm very conscious that we still have Councillor Cheap, and I think you intimated Councillor Gregg, and we do have Councillor MacDonald. Anybody else, so I can write it down? And Councillor Duff. Councillor Cheap.
Mine's very simple, it's for position for clarity. So if, as I understand at the moment, that the standing orders have that, as you say, 8 people have to have at least spoken before anybody else who hasn't spoken can bring closure. If we go with what's there at the moment, that would remain. So we'd need a motion from somebody to change that. That's what I understand it to be. So I'm happy to be remain as it is. So I just want to be sure that I'm not missing on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Provost. Mine was a comment rather than a question, when you're ready to take those.
Ask you to stay that for a minute then, and we'll finish off with.
Thank you, Provost. I think it was agreed within the MOG that perhaps it would be good to have it left as it is, as Councillor Cheap had intimated. I would disagree with Councillor Cowdy that it can be quite a useful thing, and it ultimately comes down to the individual elected member to have an understanding of the standing orders and how they work, and perhaps on occasion can be used to your advantage. For example, this one, remember back to several councils ago, it was in fact Councillor Cheap that brought this one and sort of surprised all the rest of us as we frantically were looking through our standing orders. Can he do this? Can he do it? But again, it's down to our understanding, and that if you want to use this, then it's depending on how organised you are as a group, whether you've been on lines of administration or opposition. So I fully support leaving it in here and leaving it as is, and again refer all the elected members to brush up on their standing orders.
I'm not keen on you looking at me saying that. Councillor MacDonald.
Aye, so I agree with Councillor Gregg again. I think I heard Councillor Proctor muttering about former Councillor Richard Moore, who was the first one that actually, in my time as a councillor, brought it forward. And at the time we were aghast and appalled, but he was spot on because it was just people talking for the sake of talking in that meeting. So it is really important that this is in there. I think that the caveat in the explanation for Councillor Cowdy, it's harder, I think, being non-aligned because you can't say it's, to wrap it up. So you've got that conflict between. So there is a bit of a thing there, but I think overall it's very rarely used. It's only going to be used, you don't see it used all the time. So I think for this particular one, again, I would agree with what's been said already in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. And I've got Councillor Duff.
I'll say very little, Provost. Yes, I think the standing order as it is fine. It doesn't need changed. It deals with the circumstances as explained. I think Councillor MacDonald summed it up well.
Colleagues, we're back to Mrs Forsyth.
I don't think that there's any amendment in relation to that particular item, so I think there's agreement across the Chamber, Provost, that the status quo remains for 18.1. So we can move on to 36.2, delegation to committees and subcommittees, where there was a proposal to increase the number of members that may refer an item to full council. Currently, 2 members can refer an item under Standing Order 36.2, and the proposal was to, by officers, was to consider whether the MOG would want to increase that. I understand that Councillor Duff has a motion in relation to that item, as indicated.
Councillor Duff.
Thanks very much, Provost and Mrs. Forsyth. Yeah, I'm proposing a motion here on this 36(2) delegation to committees and subcommittees, and the motion is it's proposed that the ability to refer a matter to full council is possible with the agreement of 1/3 of the councillors present rather than 2 members. This is in line with practice in other local authorities and prevents overuse of the measure. So that's the motion. Just to sort of speak to it, I think that the 2 members is rather a low bar, and potentially we would get too many referrals to full council. I would also remind members that we are proposing, and it's later on the agenda, to change the number of full councils per year from nominally 7 to 5, which means potentially longer agendas and longer meetings. So we want to be, I think, measured about the number of things that do get referred to full council. It's very much more appropriate to deal with matters at the appropriate service committee. So that's really why I think we're making it slightly more difficult to refer matters to full council. 1/3 of a committee is still a minority, but it's a more significant minority than simply 2. And I think that's the argument for making it a little bit more difficult.
Councillor Duff, before I ask, because Councillor Speed would like to speak, I need you to tell me if you've got a seconder.
Yeah, I would like to propose that we keep it at the same of 2 councillors, because I think that then takes into consideration non-aligned members or committees where perhaps there are only maybe a couple of ward members that are in the same ward. And do you know, I just think it gives that ability for greater accountability of taking decisions that should perhaps be taken at full council or the relevant committee. So I would propose that we keep it at 2.
Would you have a seconder for that? Further on, Councillor Gregg, you did want to come in, so.
Thank you, Prof. But Councillor Speed got there before I did.
Sorry, I missed that.
Councillor Speed beat me to it.
Can I ask Councillor Proctor because I don't want to miss? Can I ask Councillor Proctor because I don't want to miss anybody?
Provost, thank you. I just feel that the point that Councillor Duff made about more people and the referring the matter to full council, it really doesn't happen that often, and in my experience, and I do think that Councillor Speed's point is quite cogent, and I think that we should leave things as they are. And I'm getting enough of feedback in me.
I thought we'd suddenly had an influx of birds, but never mind. OK, ladies. Councillor MacDonald.
Just in support of Councillor Duff's motion, I think Councillor Speed makes a really good point. It's not one to sort of, fall out about or anything like that. I think there are mechanisms that we can use to make sure, in a way, that the representations, like things like substituting for certain committees, if there's a certain Arbroath issue. Again, on a line perspective is a difficult one, I appreciate that. It is that thing of, though, because there's a restricted amount of meetings potentially, and the committee that whatever is in is specified to decide that role, that's why the suggestions come forward. It's not about taking away the limitations, it's about making sure the business is maybe done at the right committee. But again, like I say, it's not one to fall out about or anything like that. I absolutely understand your views, but if you're looking at it from the sort of running the committee side of the fence, it makes a lot of sense to have stuff run through the committee that's meant to be leaving full council, hopefully, to have an agenda that covers it. Because at least one thing we've managed to avoid at this point, though, is the agendas that were about 23 items long just after COVID. So we don't want to be getting into that sort of territory again. I don't think, where you're not coming out of council till 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night.
Amen. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Provost. I would agree in part with Councillor MacDonald. There are mechanisms in place. It's called the standing orders. Whilst you might want to refer something to another committee or council, again, you still need to comply with other parts of the standing orders. If you want to move that, you still need someone to have to second it. And if you have no one to second it, it goes nowhere. So there are other mechanisms within the mechanisms. But again, I say that if you don't have an understanding of the standing orders, you're not going to be able to take advantage of it. I don't think it happens all that often that items are specifically referred to other councils, and it's certainly not done lightheartedly and just to cause issues and to cause problems with officers. We know how heavy their workload is, and to have another agenda item sent there are further implications of that. So it's certainly not something that's done lightly, and I'm sure that if anyone does it, then they're doing it with the right intentions in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Can we go back to so we're at this? I don't think there's any other. Oh, Councillor Boyd, did you want to say something? Okay.
Sorry, I do. Thank you, Provost. Having witnessed only last week a deferral of a park bench in Montrose after debating for nearly half an hour of about a potential £200 and then rubber stamping millions of procurement contracts, I think we should be sticking with the Mark MacDonald's proposal as such. We've got the right balance of how we speak in these things. We do not want to go back to the 7 hours meetings or whatever. In neighbouring councils, the Provost spends 15 minutes in the chair, yet our council spends hours. Why? Horse trading should be done and sorted before full council. We don't need to move to deferral. Finally, I'd like to remind members the official role of Angus Provost from our own website is the Provost of Angus is first citizen and attends a wide range of civic, community and locally significant engagements on behalf of the community. As the civic head, the Provost's role is to promote Angus locally, nationally and internationally, and to recognise the special achievements of the local people and organisations. There is no mention of council meetings in what's on our website or South Aberdeen's as well. I will therefore not be voting for Councillor Gregg's his amendment, and with good reason. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Speed, sorry.
Thank you. I think Councillor Whiteside and then Councillor Wan.
Thank you, Provost. Just to reiterate, I think what Councillor MacDonald said, I think we'll have to be very careful not to diminish the role of our committees. We've got committees in place for a particular reason, and to make the change that Councillor Duff has suggested makes total sense for me and does not diminish the role of those committees or conveners. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteside. Councillor Wan and then Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Provost. I don't want Councillor Boyd to go over exactly what he said there because it seemed to be a bit long-winded and I didn't understand a thing that he said. But I appreciate that he's trying to help us lesser councillors. But is there any chance you could actually say some of those points slightly slower and maybe just more direct? Because I honestly have not got a clue what he was blethering on about.
I think if we can beg indulgence from Councillor Scott, would that be okay? I think possibly for clarification, that's okay. Councillor Boyd, would you mind?
Yes, of course. All my life I've been told I gabble. So my apologies for that. I will slow down, take it nice and calm, and will read out what I have written. Having witnessed only last week a deferral of a park bench in Montrose after debating for nearly half an hour about a potential £200 saving, and then us rubber stamping millions on procurement contracts, I have seen many times over my last 14 years we debate small amounts and yet spend millions of taxpayers' monies with little debate. Referring has never improved, and referring has never improved this situation. In our neighbouring council, the provost spends 15 minutes in the chair, yet our council spends hours. Why? Because horse trading is done and should be sorted before full council. I would finally like to remind members of the official role of the Angus Provost from his website, but you can actually read that yourself. Councillor Wan. Thank you.
Still no clearer, but thank you very much.
Councillor Scott then, really. I'm a bit confused myself.
Yeah,
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Provost. I'm a little bit confused as well. But Councillor Stewart, is it okay if I sat at home and watched PNR? It wasn't a couple of £100, if Councillor Stewart will probably confirm that. I think it was a couple of thousand, wasn't it? And it was common good money. So I think it was important at that point that that was taken forward, because we are the custodians of the common good and people expect value for money. So that wasn't actually what I was initially going to say, but I've gotten sidetracked now since then. Thank you, Councillor Stewart, for that. What I was going to say is I was the last one, I think, to use this refer to full council, and it was before we had a housing committee. And housing affects all of us, and I therefore used it for that reason. So I think it's a very important tool, and I think when it's matters that all 28 of us might want to have a say on, so therefore I'll be support. Obviously I've seconded, so of course I'm supporting. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cowdy. Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you. I've listened carefully to this debate, and I would say actually that sometimes things do need to be hashed out at full council, and this is a really good example of that. For me, the fact that sometimes decisions should be at least put before all councillors in a particular ward if it is something that really affects that ward so deeply. I've seen in different committees, including one quite recently, where Arbroath councillors weren't all able to state their opinion on an important issue. It wasn't referred to full council, and so we didn't have that opportunity. And so I think I don't think we've abused this situation so far, and I'm sure everybody is very respectful of the way in which we would use this power if we were to keep it. But I think we should stick with just 2 councillors being needed. Thank you.
Point of order, Provost. Can I ask, in terms of standing order 18.1 to closure of debate, please? I think we've gone on long enough, and let's go to the vote. Thank you.
You just put me to that. Councillor Brazen, now if you're going to make a big statement, you've got them to answer to.
No, I'm not going to make my big important statement.
Sorry, you've really got to go to the vote. Okay.
Sorry, Provost, that's a procedural motion. If Councillor Fotheringham has a seconder for that, then we would go to the vote. Okay, so I think I'm confused here now. So Councillor Fotheringham, seconded by Councillor Gavin Nicholl, is to move for closure of debate, and I've just clarified with Mrs Stewart that we have had the required number, so we have had over 8 speakers. So the motion is obviously for closure of debate, so if you could vote yes for closure or no for non-closure, and then we will do that at the end. Do you want to do that? Yes. This is for... Sorry, just to clarify, this is for closure of debate. So yes or no, please.
Provost. Deputy Provost.
Yes.
Councillor Beattie.
Yes.
Councillor Bell. Yes. Councillor Boyd.
Oh, just go for yes.
Councillor Braze.
Yes.
Councillor Cowsey. Yes. Councillor Cruikshanks. Councillor Devine. Yes. Councillor Dornan. Yes. Councillor Duff.
Yes.
Councillor Durno.
Yes.
Councillor Fotheringham,
Yes.
Councillor Gall,
Yes.
Councillor Gregg,
Yes.
Councillor MacDonald,
Yes.
Councillor McLaren,
Yes.
Councillor Meakin,
Yes.
Councillor Melville,
Yes.
Councillor Gavin Nicol,
Yes.
Councillor Louise Nicol, Councillor Proctor,
Yes.
Councillor Scott,
Yes.
Councillor Shepherd,
Yes.
Councillor Speed,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wan, and Councillor Whiteside.
Yes.
Provost, that's 28 for closure of debate. Councillor Duff, as the holder of that motion, can sum up.
Councillor Duff, do you want to sum up?
Well, I don't really want to say much more. Just to sum up, I think that I've maybe got a longer memory than some members. I do remember in some terms quite a number of things being referred to full council. I remember in the last administration, was it maybe a few years ago, some toilet closures being referred to full council. I remember sundry things in the first administration I was in where regularly the same suspects refer things to full council. I am concerned. I do also remember the 9-hour council meeting during COVID when we had 3 parts to it. It went over 3 days. We don't want to get back to that. And if it's too easy to refer things to full council, frankly, people will use it as a grandstanding opportunity. And I think there needs to be a little bit of control. And a third, I think, is a higher bar, and I think that's appropriate.
Provost, just to clarify, in terms of Standing Order 18.2, the mover of the amendment may also sum up at this stage.
Thank you. I don't think that this is a standing order that gets overly used. And as I've explained previously, I think it does help those that are non-aligned and not in a party and don't have the numbers. There have been many important agenda items that have been referred to full council. Also, as Councillor Cowdy explained, there are occasions where perhaps there's a particular ward or town issue and not all of the local members are present. So I do ask my colleagues that you will vote to keep it to 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. We'll just go to the vote. The motion by Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, in relation to Standing Order 36.2 is to increase the number of members that may refer an item to full council to 1/3 of those present and voting. The amendment by Councillor Speed, seconded by Councillor Scott, is that the number that may refer remain at 2. Please vote motion or amendment.
Provost. Motion. Deputy Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Beattie.
Motion.
Councillor Bell. Motion. Councillor Boyd.
Motion.
Councillor Braze.
Motion.
Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Cruikshanks. Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Dorn.
Amendment.
Councillor Duff.
Motion.
Councillor Durno.
Motion.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor Gall.
Amendment.
Councillor Gregg. Councillor MacDonald. Councillor McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Meakin.
Amendment.
Councillor Melville.
Motion.
Councillor Gavin Nicol.
Amendment.
Councillor Louise Nicol.
Amendment.
Councillor Proctor.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Amendment.
Councillor Shepherd.
Motion.
Councillor Speed.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Wan. And Councillor Whiteside.
Motion.
There is 13 votes for the motion and 15 votes for the amendment. Therefore, the amendment is carried.
We're just getting... We're back to Mrs Forsyth again, folks.
Thank you, Provost. It's in relation to 6.2 contained within the report. The tracked changes were included within the papers. However, the MOG did consider a number of other items where there were no proposed changes. The information is contained within the report, and we're just seeking agreement prior to approval of the standing order document.
Colleagues, does anybody have a question? I see no hands. Would anybody like to comment? Just, sorry, for clarification, it would just be those elements. At this point, before we go to recommendations, I would like to ask Councillor Cheap to address this amendment.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Let me just see if I can find it again. No, I can't. Yeah, thank you. My amendment is, in relation to this agenda item 10, is to add to the list of recommendations 1 to 5 a further recommendation 6, quote, to refer Standing Order 19, open brackets 3, close brackets 1, to the MOG for further discussion and for the results of said discussion and a recommendation thereon to be presented at the next meeting of Angus Council, whereupon elected members can vote appropriately. That's the amendment. For the avoidance of doubt, Standing Order... Excuse me. Again. Yeah, Standing Order 19.3.1 states that, quote, where prior to the vote in any particular matter, the members present agree that it be taken by ballot. We've already discussed this afternoon about the need for transparency in Council, and I'm referring this back to the MOG to basically remove the need for a secret ballot in Council. We're here as elected members. We are responsible to our constituents, and our constituents need to know how we have voted in all matters. So I don't see the need for a secret ballot at all in Council. Certainly in the 8 and a bit years I've been here, it's only been done once. And I really believe that our constituents need to know how their elected members have voted on all matters. So that's why I'm recommending by this amendment for it to be taken back to MOG for further discussion, to then come back to Council to be voted upon. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder, Councillor? I would ask Councillor Degg to come in at this point because he's indicated.
Yeah, just to seek some clarification. I mean, we've just had a discussion about referring things to other councils or committees, and here we are perhaps doing that. So just for clarity, Councillor Cheap is asking for an amendment to the recommendations as they are in the paper. So I would propose that we agree the recommendations as they are, because that is, we would believe, the current motion. So is that correct? So, yeah.
Just for clarification then, my understanding as well is the status quo is what you're speaking about, and any amendment that comes in is against the status quo because you want to repair it. Am I summing up properly?
You are.
Are there any comments to that, Councillor Donald and Councillor Duff?
Just to clarify on the amendment is asking that this topic is then taken back to the MOG to discuss, to then come back to full council. Yeah, that's what the amendment's asking for. Okay, so we're not approving anything within that other than that it would warrant further discussion. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Bear with me a minute, I've just got to get them in order. Right, we've had Councillor Doran, we'll now go to Councillor Duff, after which we'll have Councillor Melville, Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Scott. Anybody else, just please indicate.
Provost, just as a point of order, mine is a comment. I don't know if Councillor Scott has a question. I'm more than happy to make way for Councillor Scott on that point.
I think you have to wait until that's the case. So I'll bring you in, don't worry. So we should really go to Councillor Duff.
We're now on comments.
Question. No, it's all questions. So
mine's a comment.
Right, you're going to have to wait then. You haven't. So you're okay right now. So we've got Councillor Wan. Is there anybody else with a question? Yes, Councillor Scott first.
Thank you very much, Provost. So this has already been discussed at the MOG, has it? You're saying, yeah. Sorry. Oh, right. So this hasn't been to the MOG, but it's to ask it to go to the MOG. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. It's just to confirm that the whole of the standing orders were considered at the MOG. However, this wasn't highlighted as a particular issue or a particular provision to be looked at, but certainly the MOG had the ability to look at it at that time, and this has arisen subsequently. Thanks.
Is everybody okay with that? Are you clear about that? Yes. Councillor Wan first, then Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you, Provost. Just a very quick question to the officers then. On the basis that we have discussed the standing orders as a MOG, can we just go now and decide that today? The 28 of us are here. I don't see any reason to reconvene the MOG to discuss this one item, taking officers' time when they're so busy. I would just like clarification if we can actually just determine this today.
That would be competent, yes.
Councillor Cowdy.
Derek's voiced my words. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Councillor Melville had a comment.
Well, thank you, Provost. I suppose following on from what Councillor Wan has just said, just a point of clarity as to whether or not Councillor Cheap wants to make that his amendment, if we just determine that today rather than referring it to the MOG, given what Councillor Wan has just said.
Just for clarity, I thought it was democratic to at least go to the MOG first, who would consider all the standing orders, and that was the reason it would go to the MOG first to then come back after discussion, and that recommendation for the MOG could then be voted on by this council. I think people need to think clearly about what is actually in the standing order and what the implications are for jumping straight into a vote here to say whether it should be accepted or not. So my amendment really is still to go to the MOG.
One.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest maybe a 5-minute recess that we can discuss it, or a 10-minute recess, but I can't see any reason that we all know the standing orders or should know the standing orders, why it needs to go back to a select few to then come back to 28. Thank you.
Can I ask Councillor Gregg, because he's been into meeting, what would it be the problem there?
Thank you, Provost. I think if that's the decision that we want to do, to go for the recess, I would ask that we get clarification from Ms Watson exactly around what the standing order specifically is and what it is we're potentially being asked as a motion and amendment before we go into the recess, so that we know what we're going to be discussing in.
I think that's particularly fair, really. But I'm going to ask Councillor Shepherd, because he's not spoken at all today, and I think he has every right.
I mean, the way I understand it is, if you want a secret ballot, you would not support Councillor Cheap's proposal. If you do want secret ballots in the chamber, you'll go against that. You know, I kind of agree with Councillor Wan. It would save time going back to the MOG. Just as a councillor, vote if you want secret ballots, yes or no. It's a pretty straightforward choice.
I think you've summed it up, unless anybody wants to contradict that. I think, sorry, Right, okay, before we go off then, Councillor Duff, then Councillor Brace.
Thanks, Provost. I mean, thanks, Provost. I've had the, I'm going to say the pleasure of sitting on the standing order MOG for it seems like years. And we have had a lot of debates about a lot of issues. And I think that's the place to do the detailed discussion about this issue and try and get a consensus. Because when we debate things at the MOG, officers will say, well, have you thought about this? We'll check what other councils do. There's a lot of good information gathering as part of the MOG, which it's better done with a small group. And then the MOG, if it can reach consensus, it will produce a recommendation to full council that we can agree. I think we've set a MOG up for a purpose because it takes hours, and we have spent many hours debating things. We don't want to tie up 28 people doing that. So that's why we set a MOG up. This was something that was not considered by the MOG, and I think it should be considered by the MOG, and I would support Councillor Cheap's motion to take it back to the MOG for discussion, because I think it's an important issue about democracy and about transparency, and I think that should not be understated.
Yes, I think it's extremely important that this goes to the governance MOG to be discussed and debated, perhaps over many hours, rather than coming to a decision on the back of a 10-minute recess today. And one aspect, if this does go back to the MOG, one aspect that might have to be considered is how on earth does this play out in a budget situation? It would be entirely possible for Council to decide that we're going to have a secret ballot on the budget. Now, are you going to be able to come up with answers to all this in a 10-minute recess and then take a vote? Well, we'll decide among the 28 whether we're going to do just that or not very shortly. But you better bear in mind that your constituents are watching and they're going to be wondering why on earth we would be allowing secret ballots in what is supposed to be a democratic chamber where we represent the people that elected us. They have a right to know how we vote. Now, if you vote against this amendment to put it into the MOG, not back to, but into, for careful consideration, then what you're doing today is excluding your constituents from the knowledge of how you voted on perhaps extremely important issues such as the budget. And I think that would be a really foolhardy thing to do. But anyway, on you go.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. And just before I have the people in that are on my list, we'll have to be aware of two things. There's an awful lot of speaking going on and an awful lot of people maybe haven't spoken, whatever. I've still got you down here, though. Also, the time we've been sitting here, there is a consideration of suspended standing orders as well. So, although we've had a couple of wee breaks for good reason, so I will actually ask that we go into recess soon, and it'll probably have to be about for 20 minutes. But I will agreement, please. My button's not quite right here. My finger's not right. Can you give me an agreement to suspend standing orders?
Until conclusion.
Until the conclusion of this business. Because I need to get that agreement, otherwise we've got people sitting waiting. Okay? And I would also remind people that, you know, we may be getting to the stage again where Councillor Fotheringham will remind us we need to close the debate, which he has every right to do. Okay? So, Councillor
Stewart. Okay, Councillor Stewart now.
Councillor Stewart, Councillor Doran, Councillor Gregg, Councillor Speed, Councillor Cowdy. Have we got that right? Okay, off we go.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, from what I'm hearing today, the MOG has met already, and I don't understand why they haven't discussed this already in the MOG. And, you know, they could have brought it to here today or discussed it within the MOG prior to coming here today. So I just can't get my head around that one.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. I do want to raise an issue around this. I am happy to support further discussion of this. One of the important aspects of this standing order, I think, is relating to the fact that the increase of abuse for elected members, particularly women, is a really key one, and there might be reasons why a secret ballot would be appropriate for it to be used. And I think that really needs careful consideration around that. So if we were to vote today on it, I would be voting against removing it. So I want to keep it in because of that worry around that, because I think there really is maybe circumstances where that might need to be used at Angus Council, but it might be that there are restrictions put on the use of that standing order where it can be raised in certain areas. But I'm really uncomfortable about this for that reason. So that is one of the things I want to make sure is raised in this debate.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. I've got Councillor Gregg next.
Thank you, Provost. I don't really understand what the reasoning is for asking for this to be referred back. And as previously been said, we sat in a MOG, we discussed it. Up until this point, it's never been a consideration of concern for anyone, certainly not one that was highlighted to me individually, or I believe the MOG. So I don't understand what has changed.
There was a call for a secret ballot in this chamber previously.
Yeah, I brought
it. Was successful and it was held, and I'd just like to point out that Councillor Whiteside and myself asked for a dissent to be noted because at that time we thought it was a despicable way to treat our constituents by taking votes in secret. Thank you.
Just ask members to mind their tone, please. Can we just carry on?
Thank you, Provost. As I was going to lead on to say, it was myself that brought that motion of a secret ballot back then. And I believe at the time, it was the only time that that particular standing order had ever been used. So it's not something that's going to suddenly crop up at every other committee meeting or every other council meeting. And I certainly wouldn't suggest it would come up at a budget meeting. I think that's completely different. I think when it comes to the political ping-pong and battle within a budget, I don't think anybody's going to want to hide how they vote in that. So I very much doubt that would ever be the case. Of course, never say never, but I strongly would doubt it. As Councillor Dorn pointed out, it's not just about the secrecy. There could be some very valid reasons as to why somebody may wish there to be a secret ballot on a particular item. There are other options. Might be if a particular party group have been whipped in a particular way, but someone feels strongly against it, that gives them that out. It gives them the ability to vote how they feel is the right way to vote, rather than being whipped to vote in a particular way. And the final point I would like to make with this is on Standing Order 19, when it comes to that, if someone asks for that secret ballot, again, like Standing Order 18.1, it must be seconded by someone, and then it goes to a vote. If the majority of those there present do not agree to it, the secret ballot doesn't take place, and it reverts immediately back to a vote by roll call. So, like with many other things within the standing orders, there are other mechanisms within it to either stop, prevent, or so that things just can't be blindly followed through. I would completely support keeping this in for a number of reasons, and I certainly don't agree with having it referred back to a MOG, which will then report back to the council as it just drags it out. And we've already had a previous discussion about that, and we've seemed to ignore the conversations that we've just had about that.
Thank you. Now we have Councillor Cowdery. We've still got Councillor Speed and we've still got...
I believe the MOG has been represented as that's the MOG finished, but the MOG hasn't finished. It's an ongoing MOG. So this referral will be made to the next meeting of the MOG. So just to be really clear, and officers I'm sure will guide me, the MOG is still meeting. It's not like the MOG's getting set up specially to discuss this particular item. It's a continuous ongoing thing. That's my understanding. Might be wrong.
Point of clarification, it's my understanding that the MOG we've completed the discussions around this, the scheme of governance with regards to standing orders, and we're about to move on to the other part of the scheme of governance, which I think is part 2, if I'm correct.
I think we need a little bit of clarification, and I'm going to soon expect people to just finish this because I think we're going round in circles. Can we get a point of clarification?
Thank you, Provost. I think in terms of the MOG, while there's no set timetable for the governance MOG to meet, if there were particular issues, then that MOG effectively is not finished. It will sit in abeyance to consider any proposed amendments to standing orders.
I'm going to ask people to be as concise as they can be, please. So can I ask Councillor Cowdery, followed by Councillor Speed, and then Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you very much. If it's the choice of this chamber to discuss this at the MOG, I've got absolutely no problems with that. But what I don't find helpful is having both discussions at once. So whether we should be or shouldn't be referring it to a MOG, and for example, Councillor Bray is then giving us quite a long and passionate explanation of why he thinks one side of the debate is, quote, despicable. I think we need to have that reasoned conversation at the MOG or decide now, but not get all tangled up in doing both things at once. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdery. Councillor Speed, then Councillor MacDonald.
Probably just on that then, before I don't want to kind of go and speak in terms of what my views are on this. Are we deciding to go to the MOG or not? Or are we taking... Is that...
I think you were commenting and I was just asking
you to be
okay? Concise.
Yeah, so...
And I really do want you to be concise.
Okay, so yeah, I can only recall the standing order ever being used once, and I think that's a good thing. I think all of us would agree that we don't want to be, you know, having secret ballots. Openness and transparency is important, it's crucial. However, so is honesty in decision making, and there are at times sensitive decisions that do need to be made. And you know, going to a ballot at times perhaps helps ensures that the right decision is made rather than a politically forced one. As Councillor Doran has highlighted, we do need to consider some of the real risks that are there. And I feel that until there is more kindness in politics, that this standing order helps ensure that councillors can make a vote without being unfairly whipped or pressured, sometimes forced into making decisions. That, for me, is not how local democracy or human behaviour should be.
Careful.
Sorry.
Just moderate your language, please. I have got on other people. Don't use the word forced.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. It was just and I just have seen that playing out. Just was an honest comment, but okay. Thank you. So we do need to at times ensure that there are safe spaces to be able to vote freely. And I propose that we keep this, but monitor the situation closely, because I wouldn't like to see this standing order being used as a regular occurrence.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Now, before Councillor MacDonald comes in, Councillor Devine, did you intimate you wanted to speak? No. Can I ask Councillor MacDonald then? And I really would like to...
Thank you, Provost. I actually think Councillor Doran and Councillor Speed have just made the argument for the MOG. The way, and Councillor Gregg to an extent, the way that the standing order is written is it can be used. It can be used in a budget. It can be used in other meetings. Just saying it hasn't been used before isn't really good enough. It needs to be tightened up, and I think Councillor Doran made that point. The place to discuss about the issues that Councillor Doran made up is to have that discussion in the MOG, like Councillor Duff said. It can be extrapolated by officers and explained, rationale given, examples given. The issue with having it as it is in the chamber right now is it can be abused. It can be. It's not to say it will be. We're all good people, I think, generally. But Not looking at anyone in particular, Brian. But the point is it can be abused. So I think that the reason it's been referred to the MOG, and it shouldn't be as politically contentious as it is so it can have that discussion around it. It can come back and it can be decided. And given the fact that we now know the MOG is not being set up specifically again for this, it's going to be an ongoing thing. We can definitely look at it. But as Serena said, or Councillor Cowdy said, sorry, Councillor Cowdy, it doesn't need to be as het up as this. We're talking about the rules of how we conduct ourselves in the chamber. You know, it's not something that we should be as black and white on, I think.
Okay. I would move that we, because I'm allowed to make a motion, I would like to go into recess at the moment, and that gives you a bit of time, because we actually do have to consider, we've already agreed that we would get to the end of it. I think all the talking has been done. So all you would be doing is going away, having the break that you need, and you're coming back, and we go straight into this vote.
For how long?
And so can I just say 15 minutes?
Can I ask for the legal clarification from both Ms Watson and from Sarah about what...
Please just take 15 minutes.
Before we go into the... oh, too late.
John, can you pause the live stream, please?
Thank you, colleagues, and sorry for that again, but we really did need that wee bit of time there. And my colleagues to my left here will have to announce some clarification, and at some point I will ask Councillor Cheap to come in and speak to his amendment, but there are a few tweaks first. Mrs Forsyth.
Thank you, Provost. I think just clarification around where we are in terms of this debate. So currently there is a motion on the table by Councillor Gregg that is to approve the recommendations as detailed in the report. Councillor Gregg will require a seconder for that. The amendment by Councillor Cheap is to approve the recommendations subject to the additional recommendation as outlined by Councillor Cheap, which is to refer Standing Order 1931 to the MOG for further discussion. So that's where we are in terms of the debate at this time.
In fairness, though, Councillor Cheap didn't get the chance to sum up.
So he's got
It's
the
just
amendment.
Right, so just for clarity, just to make sure that we're getting this right, you've just explained what's going on, that's fine, as long as I'm fair to everybody at some point. Clear on what we're doing there. Okay, so where are we now?
Need a seconder for Councillor Gregg's motion.
Which appears to be Councillor One. Do you know this? Today I was listening intently to a debate about doctors and not having enough. And I've just appointed half the council to the doctorate. It is Councillor One.
So, Councillor Gregg.
Are there any other comments to this before we can get on to the next proceedings? Right, just before you, Councillor Cheap, I'll get to you.
He can't sum up. Councillor Cheap can't sum up. It's the motion
It's
is
just
with Councillor
right.
Gregg.
Councillor Cheap, you can't sum up at this moment because we have to go to the motion. There's a motion being raised, so we'll have to go to that first. Okay? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Provost. As Ms Forsyth has said, my motion would be that we recommend that we approve the recommendations as per the report, including what we've also just discussed in 6.1 and 6.2 of the report, which has already been agreed, and that we agree the paper as is.
And you have a seconder in Councillor One. Do you want to say anything? No. Councillor Cheap. You've had your turn for speaking because of this motion now, so you have to be correct. Sorry about that. Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, Councillor Cheap, that you as the holder of the amendment, there's no entitlement for you to sum up.
If there are no further comments.
I just point of clarification, so I've got this right in my mind. So basically, Councillor Gregg's motion now is saying we don't, and Councillor Cheap's is saying he wants to take it to the MOG. Right. So I know I've got that right in my hand. Thank you.
I'll just say one thing for easy clarification is everything that Councillor Gregg is bringing as the motion is I'm also going along with, except I'm adding on one further recommendation to take the 19.3 to the MOG. We're not making a decision on that, just to take that to the MOG. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that notwithstanding, we can go to Mrs Forsyth.
Thank you, Provost. So the motion by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Wan, is to approve the recommendations as detailed in the report. The amendment by Councillor Cheap, seconded by Councillor Bell, is to also approve the recommendations in the report, but to include a further recommendation that that Standing Order 1931 be referred to the Governance MOG for further consideration, and the results of that discussion and recommendation thereon to be presented at the next meeting of Angus Council, whereupon elected members can vote appropriately. Please vote motion or amendment.
Provost.
Motion.
Deputy Provost.
Amendment.
Councillor Beattie.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell.
Mike's aren't working. Amendment, anyway. All right, amendment.
We've just lost it.
Councillor Bell.
Amendment.
Amendment.
Councillor Braze.
Amendment.
Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Cruikshanks. Councillor Devine.
Amendment.
Councillor Don.
Amendment.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Durno.
Amendment.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Motion.
Councillor Gall.
Motion.
Councillor Gregg.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Meakin. Councillor Melville.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl. Sorry,
Motion.
Gavin Nicholl, apologies. Councillor Louise Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Proctor.
Motion.
Councillor Scott.
Motion.
Councillor Shepherd.
Amendment.
Councillor Speed.
Motion.
Councillor Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Wan. And Councillor Whiteside.
Amendment.
There's 15 votes for the motion and 13 votes for the amendment. Therefore, the motion is carried.
Thank you, colleagues. That was quite a protracted time. Item 11. This is really just, Mrs Watson will introduce this, but it is the timetable of the meetings, August 25 to June 26. Mrs Watson.
Thank you, Provost. This report sets out a proposed timetable of meetings for the period August 25 until June 2026. A review of the pattern and frequency of council meetings has been undertaken, and a proposed timetable is included at Appendix 1. Consultation has been undertaken with neighbouring authorities and via the Solar Governance Working Group. The majority of authorities operate an 8-week cycle with 5 cycles across the timetable year. Consultation has also been held with directorates and also with the Governance Member Officer Working Group, which was supportive of the proposed timetable. Thank you.
Colleagues, are there any questions? Councillor Doran.
I've just got one quick question. The first meeting is due back, and that's not earlier, the development standards one, that's earlier than normal because it's still within the school holidays and they normally sit without the school holidays. Just a question as to why that was the case and whether it was intentionally that way or if it should be the week after. And sorry, I only spotted it when I checked the dates today. Yeah, the 12th.
Bad news for the golf shooter.
Yes, through you, Provost. So previous meetings have been around about that time. Last year it was the 13th of August, so still within the school holidays. There's no proposed change.
I don't think it, I'm sorry, I don't think it was within the school holidays last year. I think it was after.
My understanding is that there's an additional week of school holidays, so it may be that, that's why there is that slight overlap.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. Any other questions? Comments? None. Then, can we go to the recommendations 1 and 2 there? Can we agree them, please, colleagues? Agreed. Moving on then, before we go on to 12, Mrs Forsyth, you've got an intimation there.
Can we stop the live stream, please?